So I am doing this one-handed. So you can see it's really easy to cut into, and I can, once I have, you know, this part carved out and this, I can just carve between them and clear that space out. And if you're one of the people that likes the texture that can be seen on more traditional carvings, you can leave it really shallow so you get these lines. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a lined texture here that when you know, put a piece of paper down to print and you're, you know, rubbing it, there will be a little bit of ink on there and you'll get that texture. And if you're like me and you have to have it really clean, then you can clear it out with a deeper nib later. So that's the sum of it. After that, it's just a couple hours of carving it out and making sure that you don't mess up. It would be ruined and I'd have to start over. So I will really quickly show you more about this carving tool. It unscrews at the top and you take the nibs out, and it's kind of like one of those I don't know what they're called, they're tools for Phillips head screwdrivers and stuff. And then you just put in a new one and it slides in there, and then you just screw it back on. And there's how many? 5? This is a 1, which is the smallest. It's very tiny and V-shaped. There's 1, 2, 3, 5, and then there's a cutting tool. Okay, so it's been a couple days and I've finished the carving, and I've already done a few prints. And forgive my sniffles. Anyway, I made some changes up to the top, and I've fixed the problems from my first few prints. So when you do your first print, I'm going to get into that in just a second, but you can find the little errors and then go back and take them off. So there were a lot of little things left over at the top here and on the sides, right there. So that's how you get closer to a perfect print anyway. And this particular print is going to be done in an orange red, and this is the ink type I use. It's Speedball Archival. I've tried printing with regular acrylics and using a loosener on them, but it just never seems to work out quite right. You get a lot of bleed around the edges and it's just not as crisp. So here's another thing. It's an ink retarder from Speedball, and it actually works pretty good if you're going to be doing a lot of prints, because the thing with the printing ink is you're going to end up, if you're doing big prints like this especially, you're going to end up using a lot of ink, and obviously these are kind of small and they do add up. So these are my 2 colors, and I've already started, you know, I edited some prints before, and this is how it goes. You put the ink on the block, and since I have to hold this camera by hand, I'm going to have to set it down. So whatever ink you're using, I like to use just a little it's really important that you don't put too much, because then if you put too much, you know, there's no way to get it off, and your prints won't come out right if you have your brayer, that's this thing, loaded up with too much ink. So you really have to be careful about the amount of ink that you use. So I'm mixing orange and red, and I have to put them next to each other, because the thing with this stuff is you could mix it with like a brush or something, but I don't like wasting the ink that way. And if you put them far apart, you're going to get like a patchy color scheme. So I used very, very little ink, and actually that's probably a little bit too much, but you get the idea. And if you want to use the ink retarder, you just put a little drop of it on there, but for time's sake, I'm not going to do it right now. So you're going to mix it around with the brayer as best you can. I have to hold it down with one hand, hang on. Until it's at least kind of mixed together, so now it's all sort of the same color. And then you can roll it out and see there's still some orange and red that are together. And this little, it's not a piece of glass, it's plexiglass. It was like $3 at the hardware store, and I have a few laying around. It cleans off really good, and I'm not scared of cutting myself on it like I would be with a real piece of glass. So let me hold this down really quick so I can do this. If you hear that tacky sound, that's the sound that you want to be hearing. This is still a little bit too much ink. You can see by the texture, you want it to be really as smooth as possible, because whatever is on your brayer is going to be going onto your block. So if I have this texture, that means this texture is going to be put on this block, and then I'm going to put the print down and I'm going to get that texture on it. And since I want a smooth print, I want the ink on the brayer to be as smooth as possible. So if you put too much ink down, one of the options is to do a quick, like, practice print, or you could get out another sheet of this glass and brayer onto that, so you kind of spread it out a little. So you take your brayer, it's loaded up with ink, and then you just roll it on there, and you can see the ink go on. And as soon as your brayer is out of ink, like there's more on this side, not enough on that side, you just load it up again and then put more on there. Okay. I have to set this down again. This is my paper. I have all kinds of paper everywhere. I'm gonna pick this up really quick. The thing about putting the paper down is you really want to be careful, especially if it's too small, and like that, I just dropped it on there. If you lift it up and put it back down, you're going to get a double print, and it's not going to be perfect. You're going to be able to tell. It's going to be ruined pretty much. So you have to be really careful. You put it down one time, and then I use my hands, and I just smooth out from one area, and I apply light pressure everywhere. Some people use a board. There's also burnishers, which are like little flat things with handles. I had a couple of those, and I never really liked them, and I noticed that my prints had the tendency to move, and if you move this paper, it's going to smear. So that would ruin your print, obviously. So I just apply a kind of firm pressure everywhere, make sure you get all the corners. Now, another thing you have to be careful about is when you are lifting this up, you have to be careful not to drop it. I've done that. It's not fun. You have to pull it up, and there's your print. So, there we go. And there's a print. And I like this paper. It's not a cardstock. I couldn't get cardstock in town. But it is really big, and the nice thing about that is I don't have to worry, like when I did these ones, I had to worry about the edges, and then you have to line them up, and it's a real pain, and it's kind of just another layer. So these ones I can cut down to a good size. But anyway, that's my block printing tutorial. I hope it didn't ramble too much for you. So, goodbye.